Howdy, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Okayest Trapper podcast. As always, we are brought to you by a few cool sponsors. For fitness, go check out mounttoughfitness.com. For health and supplements, check out Bloke's Modern Men's Health. And for your facial hair needs, go look at Trapline Beard Oil. Go to the show notes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, or wherever you're consuming this podcast to see and use some sweet discount codes for each one of the aforementioned sponsors. Now, in today's episode, I have someone very special to talk to. She's a Colorado native who is a board member of the Colorado Trapper and Predator Hunters Association and the United Houndsmen of Colorado. As if that's not enough, she's the Associate Director of Communication for the Sportsmen's Alliance. She's also an awesome trapper and a houndswoman who chases big cats with her children in tow. Naomi Hersh, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. And just before anybody jumps on me right away, I'm not a Colorado native. I wasn't born here. They get really weird about that. So I can't. I was born in Maine, actually, while my dad was in the Navy. So, don't.
You're a Mainer. You're a Mainer turned Coloradan.
I was, yeah. We moved here when I was young, but so I don't really remember any of Maine. But moved to Colorado.
I'll go to bat for you. If you don't remember much of Maine, you're a Colorado native. So
man,
they can send me mean letters if they disagree.
They might.
But Naomi, first and foremost, thanks for taking the time. And people who listen to the show know that I always have, a question to kick everything off with. But I'm actually going to put that question on pause. Because one thing I want to talk to, being from Colorado, whether you're native or not, every person in the hunting, trapping, outdoor recreation world had a very big win in November. I was, curious if you could maybe just recount a little bit about, Prop 127, how close the vote was, and just kind of the feeling going on in Colorado by kind of getting by the skin of everyone's teeth.
Yeah. So when I first heard about it was like the September before. So we had, over a year to prepare for this, but, just seeing it on the state website, because it was a petition brought by a group. And what that petition did, they had to get enough signatures to get it on the ballot. So it had to go through the entire process. And just seeing it at first was just, your heart just sinks because you're like, it's battle time, you're getting all geared up, but it's like, just why is this happening?
And real quick, Naomi, I apologize to cut you off, but for the listeners who, might not be from Colorado or might not be as in the know, like, can you also just talk a little bit about what the bill and all those signatures that we're getting it on the ballot we're trying to push to introduce?
Exactly. So this petition was to ban all hunting of mountain lions, bobcats, and they threw in lynx as well. Even though lynx are federally protected in the lower 48 in Colorado, you can't hunt them. And there's actually no record of one even being harmed by a trapper or a houndsman in Colorado. So yeah, it banned all hunting, all methods of take of mountain lions, bobcat, and lynx. There's a few other ones that they were kind of trying to run. So we tracked this from like the very beginning, from the title board hearings and battling back and forth with the title, because you can actually go to public meetings and get the title amended in some ways, because you're not allowed to, for instance, the biggest thing was trophy hunting. When they first brought this in, the blue book, what the people of Colorado were going to vote on was going to be prohibit trophy hunting, yes or no. And trophy hunting is such a, I don't know what you want to call it, term. So fortunately, we were able to go to the title board and say, hey, this is an accurate representation of what this bill does, or what this ballot initiative does. It would take away all hunting, not just trophy hunting, is actually how we got that term out of there. So that was huge in winning this battle, because it no longer said prohibit trophy hunting. It says prohibit hunting of. And So that helped. But then, yeah, from there it was, it was a lot of door knocking. It was a lot of fundraising with United Houndsmen of Colorado, with the Colorado Trappers Association. It was a lot of meetings, a lot of getting the points right. Like, what does the public care about, and how do we reach the public? And a lot of just open air, going and talking to Fort Collins Old Town. We did that a couple of times, and really pushing the science-based wildlife management, and what it would look like if these cats were left unmanaged. So fortunately, November rolled around, and we actually won that one, not by I wouldn't call it by the skin of our teeth, because it was almost 55%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so like 10 points we won that one by. So people in Colorado, they care about the wildlife management of the wildlife that they enjoy, and whether that's just seeing them or whether that's just knowing that they're out there and just living in their apartment. So it was really good to see that people understood that this isn't a publicly managed, you know what I mean, ballot initiatives isn't the way to manage our wildlife. We should be doing that through professionals and biologists.
Yep.
So
And we'll talk about it later, I'm sure. But the wolf introduction too, that was like the first marker of like, we're doing ballot box biology all of a sudden. So it was great to have this real 180 in a matter of months to say like, no, we need to be thinking about this. And then, like you said, I guess I hadn't looked at the numbers closely, and 10 points is quite a bit in a big state. So like you said, the state spoke, and
yeah, the
definitely
wolf
in
thing
favor.
might have helped us. Yeah, the wolf thing might have helped us, because I think a lot of people realized there's a lot of wolf drama next to that election. And they were like, oh man, like, what did we do then? And this isn't going over well, even for the wolves,
Mhm.
let alone like the ranchers that are involved. And I think a lot of people that voted yes on that one for the reintroduction of wolves went, I don't know if this is the way to do things. So that might have helped us out actually on this
Yeah.
one.
I think that's pretty cool. Well, I mean, we'll probably circle back to that topic. I just wanted to get like the initial hot take for sure. But I'm going to circle back to my, tried and true first question for kind of introducing guests. And Naomi, what was the first core memory you ever have of being exposed to trapping?
Oh man, that one's tough. I remember my first bobcat very, very well. And I remember a little bit of my dad's trapping, but
Mhm.
those all kind of blend together. I remember, sitting in the truck when it's real cold and him getting out and back in, and watching him walk up to traps and stuff. But my first bobcat was really special to me because it was the first time I tried anything on my own. I went and set about half an hour from where I was living, and it wasn't working out. I knew there was a bobcat there. There's bobcat tracks there. I had one of my dad's traps. He made all of his traps. So I had one of his traps. I'm like, it's not the trap. This trap was caught before. There's a cat here. I can't figure it out. So I called him, and he's like, all right. He made the time to come help me, and we set it together. And then a couple days later, there was a cat in there, and so it was just really, it was awesome bonding experience. And that cat's actually one of them hanging up there.
Oh,
It's
awesome.
it's that one right there. Yeah. And in the winter time, I actually still wear it. I got it tanned, and I just put its head and its feet inside my jacket, and I got a nice little fur fur thing there. So and that cat, I teach a lot of wildlife classes too, and hunter education, and just wildlife in general, and that cat comes everywhere with me. So that that's my most memorable, and to this day it still helps me make memories.
That's awesome. With the what time frame was that, if you don't mind me asking? Was that like when you were young? Was this like out of your house, or were you a little older, like high school, college? What age was it when you
It
did that?
was, yeah, it was 10 years ago. It was a year after high school when I started having more time, because my high school was in town, and trapping, is not in town. So it was when I could actually make my own schedule a little bit more and get out there a little bit better and moved back into the mountains. So I think I was like 19 when I started trapping.
So I got to ask, if you look nationwide, there are very few 19-year-old females who are like, you know what I'm going to do right now? I think I'm going to go catch a bobcat. Like, clearly, like you said, your dad trapped, but like, what was the pull? Like, you were exposed to it, but what was it to say, like, I want to go do this on my own, use one of my dad's traps, and I'm going to go try this pursuit? Like, what was it that was drawing you out there for that?
I think it's the same reason that draws me out today. I grew up fortunately in the mountains in like a little mountain community, and then I moved to town to be able to afford life. You can't afford to live in the mountains when you're super young, and trying to make it on your own. So I moved to town, and honestly, I hated it. I hated living in town, and I thought to myself one day, if I have a trap just inside the mouth of the canyon in the mountains, I have to go check it every day, and I'm gonna get my fix of outdoor air and even just driving into the canyon. So that's
It was a workaround.
what's that?
So it was a workaround.
It still is. It's such a mental help for me because even today, I can sit inside all day, because it's nasty and cold outside, no one's going to go outside. But I have to, well, now pack my son up, and get out in the truck and get at least out for a drive. And I live in the mountains now again. And, as soon as I get 30 feet beyond my door, I don't have service or anything like that. So a lot of it just comes from that. That escape, it means so much to me. And I really do. The education is part of it too. The first cat I caught, and I still look at her and everything, and just knowing that now I know more about this animal than 99% of people do. It's when you get to look at them and handle them and even let them go, it's just like such a unique and special experience that kind of gets addictive too.
And I'm going to make a guess just based on everybody else I've talked to with Colorado. This was live trapping then?
Yeah, they lost their foothold traps the year I was born, 1996. So I was born in Maine, and Colorado lost their foothold trapping here the same year. So I've never gotten to foothold trap. I only cage trap.
So you only got to play the game on hard mode. And I say hard mode because I've been doing last year and this year an AFWA BMP study for live trapping pine marten, and leveraging conibears or footholds is a whole heck of a lot easier than trying to get a critter to step into a metal cage. So it's probably beneficial. I'm sure if you went and did some travel trapping and could use footholds, I bet you'd be able to adapt to that pretty quickly.
Maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure. I've thought about that a lot, and yeah, I don't know. I like the cage traps, but they're the only thing I've ever done. I'm sure you're right. I'm sure if I got some exposure with some footholds and stuff, that I'd be like, all right, this is the way to go. But yeah, cage trapping's working all right for me here right now, and that's just for bobcats too, and gray fox and red fox, and some raccoon. But like your coyotes and things like that, that's where it gets, your footholds are very, very important. And like you said, your pine marten and beaver, even like cage trapping a beaver is ridiculous. We've done it, but like, there's much better, more efficient ways to manage those other than cage traps.
Yeah. And so you are cage trapping all of those critters in Colorado then. What's your, I mean, obviously bobcat, I'm just going to make the assumption that bobcat's still like your number one, but what does it take to kind of get out there? Like with the seasons, I know so little about Colorado's current trapping regulations, but do you have pretty long windows or seasons, or is it also truncated as well?
Yeah, so our bobcat season's pretty long. It's December 1st to the end of February. So 3 months. You got to check them every day. The hardest day is like getting them out. You can only set a couple I can only set a couple a day because you're carrying a huge cage, and it's Colorado and I'm still on the front range, so I got to hide them a little bit. Otherwise,
Mhm.
people mess with them, even though it's illegal to. And you got to check them once a day. So, and then your other fur bearers, they actually start in November 1st, but I don't set until December because I don't like educating those cats, because a lot of times you catch a cat once and you can't catch that cat ever again. There's some differing opinions on that, but I've never done it. so yeah, there's a pretty long season, and you can get pretty good runs in.
Yeah. And for those who are lucky like me, where I live in Idaho, where again, we have probably the most open trapping regs. And I'm just like you, 15 minutes, or not even 15 minutes, 15 feet out of my front door. There's no cell signal, and we're right in a wilderness boundary. Prior to doing this AFWA study, it's snares, footholds. I can throw some in a pack, conibears, whatever. But sledding in cage traps into the backcountry is the biggest pain in the ass I've ever experienced in my life. So again, you're hard mode for sure. But for those listening who haven't had that opportunity, give it a try if you want a new challenge. Just huck some live traps out in the woods and see how successful or unsuccessful you are.
Yeah, it's fun. That's like I said, the hardest part is getting the trap from the truck to where you want to put it, and because of that, you don't have to be far away from a road to catch a bobcat. They are very plentiful. There's a really healthy population of them here, so I tend to, especially now with my son, I do it the easy way to cage trap, next to the road, next to a parking lot. And there's other reasons for that too. If I get too far into the woods, literally, then that's an area where I can start running my dogs, right?
Hmm.
So I'm like, I'd rather get some dog work in than catch them with the trap too. So I tend to trap more where I'm not going to set my dogs off on those bobs. So.
Yeah, well, the two questions. I want to go two directions real quick. First and foremost, I mean, your son's relatively young. I have three and under, so I know all about like the proverbial pack basket with the kid on the back, and becoming a little bit more in tune with proximity trapping, where it's a little easier, especially if I'm going to need to be taking one or more of my children with me. So, congrats on that. And I want to hear a little bit more about how you've been handling that. But also, um, after that question, let's go into hound hunting, because that's one thing that I'm so
Yeah.
uneducated on. I'd love to go on that. But yeah, let's talk about kids and trapping first.
Yeah, so my son was born in February, so
Mm.
he's going on one. He's just over 10 months old right now, and I'm still in a lucky phase right now. He's not crawling yet. He's gonna skip crawling and go straight to walking. So
Yep.
he's not very mobile. So what I do is just bring a big old blanket and just let him have a picnic while I'm setting, and it's been working really well. As soon as he gets more mobile, I'm gonna have to, and that could be like tomorrow. I'm gonna have to figure that out as I go. But he loves it. He was actually really brave on that cat. I just caught a bobcat a couple days ago, and he put his hand right up to it. He pet it and everything like that, and just thought it was super cool. I was fortunate enough to have a neighbor, and her little girl, who's I think like 14 months old now, she came also, and she's moving all over the place, but she wanted to go right up to the trap, and we're like, oh, you can't pet that kitty, yeah. But they just kids have a way of knowing what's cool, what, like, you don't need more than nature. And just even teaching these wildlife classes to kids, they're just so fascinated by what's out there. So kids and fur are always really cool to get together and learn and teach about. But yeah, hound hunting, that's definitely a passion of mine. I've got, oh, we call it 3.5 dogs.
Well, real quick,
My
what came
dad,
first? What was the hound hunting something you were a part of growing up as well, or did that evolve later on?
it's kind of, I have to tell the story of my dad more because what I do kind of came through him. But when he came to Colorado, the fur prices went up, and so he started cage trapping because he used to trap in Michigan with everything he could, conibears, leg holds, things like that. So fur prices were up. He's like, this is my backyard. I'm going to throw some cage traps out, and was successful at that. And then he decided to get a plot dog from the Upper Peninsula, and he did it. Talk about the hard way. Most people throw their young dogs in or their first dog in with someone else, or they get a hold of a dog that already knows what it's doing. Dad got this plot puppy, and I guess you got to know a little bit about plots too. They're not your normal hounds. I don't know how really to describe them. They just have a different personality than a lot of hounds.
I'll say for people listening, my only exposure to hound hunting has been through the Bear Grease podcast with Clay, and he has a whole plot hound series. So
yeah,
if you want to deep dive, go listen to that. But yeah, I'm tracking with what you're saying just based on that little bit of knowledge.
Yeah. So Dad has a plot hound, and he would just go out and find a fresh bobcat track and just walk the track with that dog. And you can tell when you jump them, your tracks go from walking to running. And so then he'd try to set his dog off, and he's like, I was this close to getting rid of that dog. And then he'd treat his first bob. And so that dog, I mean, he's he's getting older now. He's like almost 13 years old, and we still take him, but he's he got to be an amazing dog built that way. All the other dogs we've actually done the easy way. You got a good bobcat lion dog, so you throw another one in with it and it learns. That's how my blue tick is. He's a blue tick mix. He's a mutt. A lot of our dogs fell into our lap, and a lot of other houndsmen get really particular with their hounds, and they want them to be like bred this way or that way, and they get particular with what they buy. Our dogs, my best dog, he was from Idaho, I believe, but a guy wanted to get into hounds and got this dog, and this puppy bit him at 5 months old, just right in the face. And I'm like, I don't know how you get a 5-month-old puppy to bite you in the face. Like, that seems like a you problem. So so I kept it, through a friend. I got to Colorado, and we kept it. And he's not an aggressive dog at all, but he's an energetic dog, and he's really good at running bobcats and lions. And down at Sportsmen days, you were there this year. Well, the year previous, I was down there, and there was a basket of puppies, and I walked by, and I was like, that one's your good dog right there, that one. And 3 hours later, that guy came and tapped me on the shoulder and just gave me this pup. So
glad that did not happen to me. That's awesome. But I'm glad there were no puppies. My wife would have been very upset if I flew home with a puppy.
Yeah. Well, it was not a planned litter and things, but out of two good dogs. And so we haven't had him much out this year yet, but I forgot where I was going with all of this. But anyway, it was just kind of evolved, and my now husband, he got himself a blue tick a while ago, and he actually got a Catahoula, but he got the Catahoula for working cattle. Well, she has no interest in cows, but she'll run a lion. So, yeah.
Now, this is going to be one of those ignorant non-houndsman questions, but are the cats largely interchangeable? Like, if you have a good bobcat dog, will it also go after lions too, or is it really like separate species, separate interests?
No, so your lions have really good scent to them usually. They have a lot more scent, leave behind a better trail than your bobcats. So a good bobcat dog will run a lion, unless it's a personality issue or something that they have. But a good bobcat dog will run a lion easy. An easy track, easy. There's hard lion tracks, don't get me wrong. But yeah, so our dogs, we're fortunate to have two good-nosed bobcat dogs in the group, so we can run bobcats, and then those lions are generally going to be easier for the dogs to run. Not an easier day, they'll go longer, they'll extend out miles, where a bobcat generally doesn't, but there's those bobs that never tree too. And that bobcat was one that never treed. But so yeah, it's generally in here in Colorado, we can't run bear either. So a lot of your guys that can run bear and mountain lion, they'll keep them separate. Some of them won't.
And then, historically, houndsman groups and houndsmen in general and trappers don't always play nice. I know there's been a lot of effort in Idaho, and we've done a lot of work with our Idaho Houndsman group and our Idaho Trappers Association. It sounds like that. I mean, you're doing both on your own accord, which I think might be a bit of a rarity. But do you see that as less of a problem in Colorado because you don't have footholds and conibears and other restraining devices that a dog might get into? Or maybe just talk a little bit about how you view the relationship between trapper and houndsman.
Yeah, you're always going to have your bad actors. Every now and again, there's a story of a houndsman letting one out of a trap to run it type thing. But I think I don't get a lot of flack because I don't trap in easy to run areas. Kind of like we were talking earlier, you might as well have a trap there because it's right next to the highway and no one's going to want to screw around with their dogs on the highway, especially for a bobcat, depending on, where you're at. So I think a lot of it's that, and a lot of it in Colorado right now, we know that we have to just play nice with each other at this point. Otherwise, we're going to lose everything that we stand for. So I think in Colorado, people are generally pretty good at looking and being like, they're following the rules and I'm not going to bother them. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's good to hear too. We do a lot of work when, the houndsmen have a booth at a particular trade show here. We'll go and set up one too, and we'll do foothold release demos and, cable restraint demos and, wanting to have breakaways and other things on those cable restraint devices that really, show the good naturedness of what we're trying to do. And I think we're getting at a better eye to eye, but I think you're right. It's right now, houndsmen, trappers are always the low hanging fruit on the totem pole of things to be attacked. So there's no space for us to be at odds in this day and age.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of flipped here. Hounds and cage trapping, you really have nothing to worry about. It's the trapper that once in a while gets a cat let out, and they know it. It's kind of a reverse of what you guys probably deal with, the relationship wise.
Yeah. And, I want to go back into the, memory bank a little bit too. So growing up, your dad's trapping, he got a hound. Do you remember the first time that you were around or you yourself skinned an animal?
That was that first cat. That one again. And I was so slow, but I give my dad crap for this all the time. He's the only one that put a hole in that cat.
I was gonna ask if it's your first cat and you skinned it out, how many holes were in there? That's pretty funny that it was your dad who was the one who put one in.
Yeah, I mean, I was very gentle, I guess you could say. And cats, are thin skinned, and dad was just like, we've been out here for 3 hours. I'm gonna flush this thing out, and put a little hole in it. But yeah, that was the first time. I'd always been around it. So really, I don't know. I was never squeamish about it or anything like that. I ended up actually working for a taxidermy shop as a skinner for for a few years.
Well, that's perfect for this next part of the question, which is, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made in your fur shed, or in this case, working at the taxidermy shop as a skinner? Because this podcast is definitely geared towards folks like myself who are newer trappers. So I like to always kind of poke on whether it's a common mistake or not so common mistake, but what's the biggest fur shed mistake you've ever made?
Not letting my mom and grandma teach me how to sew. Learn how to sew because it'll make your life a lot easier. And just putting a hole in something and knowing how to patch it up instead of being like, what do I do now? And making a mess out of that hole, like a further mess. I would say learn how to sew, because it's just doesn't happen, you know. I just put a hole in the cat that I caught the other day, and that's the first cat I've put a hole in years. But and I was like, you know, trying to get into my memory bank like you are. Like, how do I tie this on this needle even to get it off later?
Yeah.
keep your keep your needles sharp and learn how to sew is what I would say.
Yeah. Whip stitching for the win. That was one thing, same. I had a home ec class in high school, and I never gave a crap about that. But like hindsight, like that first big hole I put in where all of a sudden I got like some fishing line, and I'm like, I guess I got to really figure this out. Thank God for YouTube. But yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good pointer. Now, similar vein of question is, and it could be you, it could be your dad, but do you have a memory of your biggest mistake that you've made on your trap line is?
I can think of the one running dogs.
Well, hit me with both. Do me the running dog one for the people who are curious about dogs, and then as you're thinking about and answering that, maybe pull one out from a trapping perspective too.
Yeah. Yeah, there was just one instance that you know, when you're sitting there at night and trying to go to sleep and your brain keeps bugging you, I always think of poor Rum dog. Well, one of my dogs' name is Rum. And we got we tried to start a bobcat in a rock pile, and man, Hiram just friggin' on the GPS, he was just gone and gone and gone. And he was young, so I was like, oh man, if he's on an elk, you know, like I'm gonna. So I used the GPS and I beeped him, you know, and toned him and turned it up a little bit, you know, vibrate, and he came back. And I was pregnant at the time, so I wasn't gonna go chase and see what he was on. And my dad was with the other dogs in the rocks trying to figure out where this bobcat went. And I drove to where Hiram eventually crossed a road to see what he was on. He jumped that cat, and he was the only one on it.
Ah,
So that was a huge mistake. I would like to say we've all done it, but I would hope not at the same time. And just, you know, learn what your dogs are on, find that track and figure it out before you do anything with the collar. And you know, I was in a tough spot because I couldn't go out and see what he was on, and there was other dogs being caught up over here. And honestly, I was just like, I don't want to lose my dog. But yeah, we now I know, let Rum do what Rum does and figure out what he's on before I get that yeah, before I react, I
yeah, I'm
guess.
sure he was pissed. He's like, "Mom," getting like vibrating. He's like, "Mom, no, I'm on it."
Yeah, well, and I think, you know, from his perspective, like, what did he learn from that, you know? And he's probably learning that he has to wait for the other dogs because they weren't with him, and that's not what you want him to learn. So, you know, we put him back on that cat, but that cat never treed. And my dad I ended up, yeah, driving all the way down one road and then up the highway parallel to it. And he went for a good 12 miles in that rough stuff. And that cat just never treed. The dogs were done. Dad's legs were done. And I was like, man, if I would have just let Rum go, did he have the pressure on that cat to put it up? I don't know. But yeah, so that one keeps me awake at night. As far as the trapping mistakes, I, there's a lot of years that I wish I just kept up on baiting more, because you know, I started putting cameras on a few of my traps, and there's been times where I'm just like, you know what, that trap's a little too far. You know, you can see it with binoculars, you know it's up,
Mhm.
nothing's in it, but you're like, oh, I just don't feel like rebaiting it. And not having the faith that you should, you know, if you had enough faith to set there, you should have enough faith to keep up with your bait there. And, you know, I'll go get that camera and just have cats walk by it because it's just not fresh.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest mistake that I make.
What's kind of the go-to in Colorado for, baiting? Like, what are you using? Is it like rotten beaver meat? Are you using like long call lures? Like, what's kind of the magic sauce of what gets the
Yeah.
cats in?
Yeah, so we have some regulations around that. Everything has to be natural, so you can't put any, like, even CD flashers or anything like that. Technically, you're not supposed to use. Um, So it has to be, yeah, it has to be natural. Grouse works really well. So I work really hard to get grouse during my archery season. And that's the best that I've seen. You hang it in the back of your cage, and then you fill in the back of the back of your cage. So like if this is the back, you want to make this really dark so that bait stands out. And then if you're targeting bobcats, what we use is like a sweet smelling. There's a lot of this in any type of brand. And we've done a lot of different brands, but a sweet smelling bobcat lure in the back of the trap. And I've started even putting a little bit on the door. I noticed cats walk in a lot better than that way. I don't know why, but and then on long call, we do use just an all predator long call and just like way up in a tree so I don't stick my hair in it because that's happened before. And yeah, so a long call, a bobcat gland lure, and grouse, and then make sure that trap is really heavily covered in the back at least. But there's people that go out and I swear they just like throw a cage on the ground and don't cover it at all, and there's a cat in there. So I like to say just trial and error and keep notes too. That's another tip. I didn't start catching until I started keeping notes about what I did on what set, what bait I was using, which direction it was kind of put with the wind and the trail that the cat would come up and down and that sort of thing. Notes help a lot.
Yeah, I'll second that for people listening too. Maybe it's an anecdotal hat tip to that, but with the pine marten study that I've been doing, it's the first time of any of my trapping that I've had to actually write down everything, like the pitch of the cage, where it's at, taking pictures, coordinates, the type of lure or call that there is, what bait you're using, like you said, the amount of cover, how many days until a catch, and do you reset it and then do you get another catch, and like all that data, like going into this year with that live trapping of marten, I feel way more confident. I'm like, oh, I kind of know generally what works for me, and it's a nice confidence booster.
Yeah, like my dad, he'll spend an hour setting one of these cage traps easy. And then my husband, he's more of the like get it out and get gone, so you can that scent can kind of leave. And they both catch cats. So I'm right in between. I spend some time on my traps for sure, but not as much as my dad does. So just you got to find what seems to work for you the best.
Yeah. Well, I want to somewhat switch gears and just kind of talk a little bit, like and people listening to this show know I talk about it, joining your local or state trappers association, and you're no different. But the Sportsmen's Alliance, that's a group that I've followed. I don't know if I'm actually a member or not, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about like kind of the more nationwide type of organizations, like what your role is, and then maybe a little bit about their role in trapping, and then obviously the other things like that, hound hunting and just hunting writ large.
Yeah, so Sportsmen's Alliance is a very impressive organization, and I'm really pleased to be a part of it. And how I found out about them was doing a project in college, and they do a lot of research, but I'll get into that. So, how they started was actually a ban on trapping ballot initiative in Ohio in like the 70 something. I think 77, 78. So ballot initiative, just like we faced here in Colorado, but in Ohio to ban trapping. And a group of guys got together and kind of defeated that. Well, then there was another ban happening, or a ballot initiative ban trying to happen in other states, and they would call these guys and be like, hey, help us, how'd you do this? So they started the Sportsmen's Alliance. So now we've grown so much that we have a 501c3 and a 501c4. So we can lobby and everything with that C4 and do a lot of education with that C3. And we actually just added our own litigation team as well. So we are heavy hitters. I like to call us the anti of the antis, so to speak. There's multiple lawsuits that we're wrapped up in right now in a very good way. One of them, there's going to be a hearing on Thursday on the 19th. We are suing the CDC for their dog importation rule. So we're heavy hitters. We get things done. We're suing the U.S. Fish and Wildlife for not responding to our petition to delist wolves in the Western Great Lakes. We're suing the Colorado Wildlife Commission for having communications and coming out with an op-ed in favor of 127 that thankfully did not pass. But your Colorado wildlife commissioners cannot do that, especially if they talk to each other and use their formal name, what they do and their status. And then we won a lawsuit in Washington with one of their wildlife commissioners on holding 2 appointed positions at once. So we do a lot of important work. Along with the lawsuits, we've always had an alert system for legislative seasons. So if anything comes up, either firearms related, wildlife related, and that includes a lot of trapping and dog stuff right now, because like you said, we're kind of the low hanging fruit, unfortunately. We will alert the state, hey, this is in your legislature. And we have an email button, you can, it's a pre-formed email that you can send all your legislatures. So yeah, we do a lot. But that was it. And I tried to brief it down, but I'm sure you'll have questions maybe.
No, I mean, it's great. Like, how does that, I mean, obviously big hitters, 501(c), and then the C4 for the lobbying. That's bigger than like the National Trapper Association, Fur Takers of America. Like, is it the same approach to involvement from like an outdoor recreations perspective? Like, can I go and get a Sportsman's Alliance membership, or is it a situation where I just go sign up, get email alerts, things like that?
You can do either, whatever your pocketbook lets you, because you can't do anything without money. So the more you're able to give to organizations like us, the more we can do. But yeah, you can sign up for state alerts for free. You can watch our Instagram page, and I'll alert there for free. We have a $35 membership. That's where it starts, and it comes with our quarterly membership magazine, The Sportsman's Advocate, and a little gift set of some knives too. So, and then it goes up from there. We have options from 35 individual all the way up to business partnerships for a couple grand and stuff.
And then from a communications perspective, like you said, like Prop 127 was a great win for the state of Colorado and nationwide, because there would have been much further reaching impacts to other states had that passed. What's from your role's perspective, like what are you focused on from a communications point of view? Like, is it just getting out the message for all of the initiatives? Is it, focused on one particular niche? Like, what's your purview?
Yeah, so Sportsmen's Alliance is cool because they don't have a particular niche when it comes to protecting sportsmen. A firearms issue is just as important to us as a bobcat trapping issue, as houndsmen, whatever. We can fight where we're going to be most effective. And that's, I think, why I really, really enjoyed becoming a part of this organization. And, trickle down from that, it's really important to join your state organizations too. Your United Houndsmen of Colorado, they need help. Colorado Trappers and Predators Association, they need help just to do what they do. And I don't think a lot of people realize, another board member and I were talking about this a couple days ago. We're on the board because it's what we can do. If we couldn't do it, and I'm sure maybe with kids and stuff, have to take a back step, but I'm going to be a member of that organization because that's the least I can do to help them fight for what I believe in. So in my perspective, if you're a trapper and you're not a member of your Trappers Association in your state, what are you doing? You know, like, I honestly don't get it unless that $35 a year or 25 a year is really going to hurt you. I don't understand, you know, why you're not. So that's my soapbox. I get a little edgy about it, but I'm like, there's really no reason not to be a part of your organizations that are helping you protect and promote what you love to do.
That's wonderful. Yeah, everybody. We'll put a link to the Sportsmen's Alliance in the show notes as well. So if you're not a member, consider supporting, or at minimum go and sign up for, the newsletter, everything else that they've got coming out, and follow the social media profiles, of course, as well. Now to kind of like not a personal question, but a question that's going to be from your perspective, which is, what do you see as the future of trapping?
Oh, it depends on what mood I'm in. Am I am I in an optimistic mood, or did something just happen where I'm worried about everything? We gotta fight for it. Otherwise, the future of trapping isn't gonna be there at all. Unfortunately, there's just way too much money on like being spent and floated around to anti-hunters and our opposition. And so that's when I'm feeling blue about it. When I'm not feeling so blue is when I'm doing these wildlife classes and showing my bobcats off to some of my students, and then you get to see him light up. And I'm even actually helping a friend right now. He's in his 30s, and he decided that he wanted to try a cage trap. And that's when I see a really bright future. We beat this ballot initiative, and a friend wants to get into it, and he has a young daughter too. And I'm like, okay, this. And when I look at my son too, and he's so young, but him just enjoying what he understands, the outcome looks really, really good. The future looks good.
Yeah. And I think too, for both adults like myself, like I didn't get started till I was in my late 20s, early 30s. I think it's okay, and we have to be open for people coming into the sport, right? It's such a positive thing to really understand the wildlife that we want to conserve and protect, but also leverage as a resource. And it's great. And then with kids, like you're seeing it with your son. I have 3 kids, 3.5, 2, and then one that was born in April. So a little younger than your son. But, I talk with my wife and I go back and forth. I'm like, they love to see like a beaver, like you said, they'll go up and pet it. There's no fear. But for my oldest, who's now 3.5, I believe, and I could be totally wrong, that she has a really good grasp on life and death, but in a very, what seems to be a healthy way to me, something I didn't have at her age. But, there's not a mystery about it. She understands. We talk to her, with good language about why we're doing it. There's no like, Dad, you just killed a bobcat. It's like, oh, okay, like this is what we do. There's respect, and then there's curiosity, and there's
Yeah.
excitement. And I think that's something that so many kids miss out on. And I'm just very thankful that my daughter and son and other daughter now are able to be exposed to it, just like your kid.
Yeah, and they get to watch you work with it, right? So that cat, they learn so much more than just even seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
They learn the skills, they learn even, when you do the whole like paw thing with the cat and those claws come out and stuff, the anatomy is cool. I learned so much in a taxidermy shop that I became passionate about just by like even looking at antelope eyes. One of the managers there came and sliced open, an antelope eye and used it as a magnifying glass on a piece of paper for me. And I was like, this is so cool.
Huh.
Like, so yeah, those things are why we need to keep fighting for this. And and I challenge everybody to think of an answer to the question, why do you hunt? Why do you trap? And it is fun, and it is fun, and I do enjoy it. It is a passion of mine, but think a little bit deeper than that. And if we lose these traditions and the heritage of this, the only ones that are going to get to keep it are going to be the ones that are going to get paid by the government because, well, there's a beaver clogging a culvert that's going across the highway. That guy's going to get to learn about beavers, but probably not even how to skin them out and everything. So, it's a slippery slope, and it can be a huge snowball if we lose just one little thing. So,
Yeah, I think that's a good call to action for everyone listening. So, as we're coming up on time, I've got two questions that I ask everybody to kind of round out the show. So the first one, with a lifetime of being in the woods with your dad and your now husband, what's the wildest experience that you've ever had?
oh man, that's going to be another hounding story. um, we started off on a bobcat at when we legally could. I think 15 minutes before sunrise on small game. Started off on a bobcat. That bobcat went, and actually the dogs had treated it. So we're like, okay, sweet. We're gonna go up this hill, go to the dogs, and we're like, awesome, we got this cat. It's gonna be a tough climb, but dogs are treed. Well, then this helicopter comes by. Turns out Colorado Parks and Wildlife was doing counts on elk that day, and they saw our dogs, and they were like, "Oh, cool, let's go check them out." And they went down low enough to actually jump that cat out of the tree. The cat got scared. The dogs went, "What is that?" The cat left. I'm assuming, I wasn't there yet. We weren't there, but the cat jumped. Dogs were running again. So we're like, dang it. So you got to pack back down the mountain. Because now they're kind of getting close to a different road that we could go into. And we're like, all right. So we start driving up that road. Well, it turns out search and rescue was doing like a training that day. So it's this tiny little 2-track on the side of a mountain with just Jeeps going back and forth. And we're like, oh my gosh, we're in our Chevys with dog boxes. And we're trying to work this out. And then it starts snowing. And I'm talking like you walk 100 yards and there's like, like a half an inch on your shoulder. You're like, oh man. So lots of snow. And we started, there's 8 inches of snow. We finally get up to the rock pile that the dogs are held up in and start just pulling dogs off, because at this time we started, 6 o'clock in the morning, and it gets dark pretty early at this point. So it's like getting on 2 o'clock and we're like, all right, we need to get dogs out. So we start, pulling dogs off. Like, you tried, guys, it's underground. Let's go home. And get them back on the road. Walking out, that plot dog caught something in his nose. And we're assuming it was a lion, but he's just gone. And we're like, oh no, we're all scrambling, catching dogs, because we don't want to go again. But that plot dog's gone. And so he's actually getting closer to the highway, we're on a road that paralleled the highway. So we go over to that road. My now husband and I are sitting on the highway, making sure he doesn't come down to the highway. My dad's up on that other road trying to call him up to that road. And by the time we ended up getting him, he did come down to the highway. So it was a good thing that we were down there. But it was 8 o'clock at night, So,
So 6 hours later from when he shot off.
we're in cliffs. We're in the Rocky Mountains, and in Idaho, that there's just some places that are rough going. So we're happy. We have all the dogs, we have all of us. We're like, okay, man, that was a rough day, but my husband and I are sitting down in a little parking lot at the bottom of the road that Dad and my sister were up. And they're texting us, coming down, don't come up. My chains took out my brake line. We're like, oh. So my husband and I are sitting there, and he turns the truck off, and we see something move across our windshield. And I was like, what was that? And I jumped out of the truck and put my flashlight on it. It's a lion. That thing just walked right by the truck, and I put my flashlight on it, and it just looked back at me from like 30 yards and just like blinked all slow and kept walking. And I was like, oh my gosh, what a
All of
way
that.
to end that day. You know, we had a helicopter, we started off on a bob, we had rock piles, we had multiple run-ins with just people on bad spots of the road and lions and cliffs, and a lion just walks right across. So sorry, that was a longer one. I might have
No,
ate up
that's
some
great.
time,
And
but
that gets a little bit of everything. That's a good push for people who want to get into hound hunting. There's probably a never-ending amount of adventure, and like you said, in those areas, like you got chains on, you can pop a brake line, and things get hairy quick,
dicey.
I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, last question. It's always a hypothetical. Would you rather fight one mountain lion-sized bobcat or 10 bobcat-sized mountain lions?
Oh, whoa. Probably 10 bobcat-sized mountain lions.
Okay, why? I gotta ask why.
They just seem more predictable to me.
Okay.
The bobs I can't predict near as well. For some reason, the mountain lions, you know, you can see them move their shoulder in a way, and you're like, all right, it's getting antsy or something. Those bobs are just like, what are you doing? Like, I have no idea where this cat's gonna go, what it's gonna do. And man, they're feisty. So a mountain lion-sized bobcat would be scary.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that too. Like, obviously, non-target catches needing to release them in Idaho, like mountain lions. You see videos and you hear stories, and the lions, like like you said, they give you their body language, and like normally they'll kind of slurk off after you get them out of a foothold. But a guy named Reese Mason, who has a really cool foothold release tool, right? He got tore up by a mountain lion, and I mean, a bobcat, and I always just imagine like those little suckers being like a cartoon, just like a ball of fur, like they're coming to fight. So I
Yeah.
think you probably made the right choice.
Yep. For
Perfect. Well,
sure.
Naomi, first and foremost, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for all you're doing with all the different organizations. Obviously wishing you luck. But as we round out, is there anything you want to plug from Sportsmen's Alliance, Colorado Trappers, and Predator Hunters Association, United Houndsmen, anything else that you want to plug, and where can people find out about like you and what you're doing and some of the hound stuff that's going on in your
Yeah.
world?
So sportsmansalliance.org, that one's easy, sportsmansalliance.org. And really just become a member of everything you can become a member of, or at least follow them and share. I, on Instagram and Facebook, I'm Outdoor Revivalist. So that's my little handle, I guess you call it. And yeah, I share a lot of stuff from all of those organizations as well. So
Cool. Well,
yeah.
Naomi, again, thank you. And for everybody listening, we'll catch you on another episode of the Okayest Trapper podcast.